The bedroom had been a graveyard for 6 months, and I was the only one mourning. Beth lay beside me like a marble statue, perfectly sculpted and just as cold, her back turned with the precision of a military operation. Every night, the same routine. She'd slip into bed wearing flannel pajamas that covered every inch of skin, position herself exactly 18 inches from my side of the mattress, and emit the kind of silence that screams louder than any argument. "Jim?" she said without turning around, her voice carrying that particular tone wives use when they're about to rearrange your entire weekend. "Don't forget about the charity gala tomorrow night, the Riverside Foundation thing." I stared at the ceiling, counting the cracks in the paint. 17? Same as yesterday. "Right." "The thing where we pretend to be happy for 3 hours while you show me off like a trained seal." "Don't be dramatic. It's important for appearances. Amanda Voss will be there. She's the regional director now. I need to make a good impression." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Beth worked part-time at the foundation, mostly planning events and managing social media. It gave her something to brag about at the country club while keeping her schedule flexible enough for yoga classes and lunch dates with the other wives. The pay was minimal, but Beth didn't work for money. She worked for status. "And Jim?" She finally turned, her blonde hair catching the lamplight. Even annoyed, she was beautiful. That was the problem. "Try to look like you actually want to be there. Smile, dance with me, act like we're still married." "We are still married," I said, though the words felt hollow. "Are we?" She turned back to her side of the bed. "Because from where I'm lying, it feels more like we're roommates who share a mortgage." I wanted to point out that roommates typically split expenses, while I paid for everything from her car payment to her weekly spa appointments. I wanted to mention that roommates don't usually promise to love, honor, and cherish each other, or that they don't typically withhold basic human affection for half a year. Instead, I said nothing. The silence stretched between us like a live wire, dangerous and crackling with unspoken resentment. "My name is James Parish, but everyone calls me Jim. I'm 40 years old, and I own Parish Brothers Electrical, the largest electrical contracting company in 3 counties. Started it 12 years ago with my older brother John, using every penny of our father's life insurance money and a business loan that kept me awake nights for the first 2 years. Now we employ 67 people, hold contracts with half the commercial developments in the region, and last year we cleared just over $2 million in revenue. Not bad for a guy who started out pulling wire through crawl spaces for $8 an hour. The success should have made me happy, should have made Beth happy too. But somewhere along the way, success became expectation, and expectation became resentment. The more the company grew, the more Beth seemed to shrink away from me, as if my ambition was somehow embarrassing to her. "I'm going to shower," I said, throwing back the covers. "Don't use all the hot water. I have that early yoga class." Of course she did. The bathroom mirror showed me a man who looked older than 40, gray threading through brown hair, lines around the eyes that hadn't been there 5 years ago, the face of someone who'd been carrying weight that wasn't entirely physical. I turned on the shower and let the water run hot, using every degree Beth had asked me not to use. The next morning, I arrived at Parish Brothers Electrical to find John's truck already in the parking lot. My brother was always an early riser, but lately he'd been getting to the office before dawn, claiming he wanted to catch up on paperwork. John was many things, charming, ambitious, occasionally ruthless, but he'd never been a paperwork guy. "Morning, sunshine," called Mary Kowalski from the reception desk. Mary had been with us since year 2, back when our office was a double-wide trailer and our biggest contract was rewiring a Dairy Queen. She was 55, sharp as a tack, and had the kind of institutional memory that made her invaluable. "Your brother's been here since 6. Coffee's fresh." "What's he working on so early?" "Don't know. Had his door closed all morning." "Oh, and Beth called. Said to remind you about some party tonight." "Gala," I corrected. "It's a gala. Apparently there's a difference." Mary snorted. "Fancy word for expensive party, where rich people congratulate themselves for helping poor people they'll never actually meet." That's remarkably accurate. I poured coffee from the pot Mary kept running all day, strong enough to wake the past and twice as bitter as my marriage. The office was starting to come alive around us. Connie Parish, my younger sister and our chief financial officer, waved from her desk where she was already deep into spreadsheets. Carl Robertson, our vice president of operations, was on the phone with a supplier, his voice carrying the easy authority of someone who'd been managing construction projects since before I was born. This was my real family, the people who showed up every day, who celebrated our wins and weathered our losses, who built something meaningful together. They felt more like home than the house I'd bought for Beth 3 years ago. John's office door opened, and my brother emerged, looking like he'd slept in his clothes. At 43, John was still handsome in that way that made women at bars buy him drinks, and men want to either befriend him or punch him. Today, though, he looked distracted. "Jim, good. We need to talk about the Morrison project. There's been a change." "What kind of change?" "Client wants to add another phase. Could double the contract value, but they need a decision by Monday." This was how John operated, always chasing the bigger deal, the next opportunity. It's what made him a good partner and a dangerous brother. He saw every situation as something to be leveraged, every relationship as a potential advantage. "That's good news, right?" "Should be, but it means weekend work, probably through the next month. I know Beth won't be happy about the hours." There was something in his tone, a familiarity with Beth's opinions that felt oddly intimate. John had always been charming with my wife, but lately I'd noticed him asking about her more often, remembering details about her schedule and interests that seemed excessive for a brother-in-law. "Beth will adapt," I said. "She always does." John smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Right, of course she will." The day passed in the usual rhythm of phone calls, site visits, and problem-solving. Parish brothers had grown beyond what either John or I had imagined when we started, but growth brought complications. More employees meant more personalities to manage. Bigger contracts meant bigger risks. Success, I was learning, was its own kind of burden. At 5:30, I headed home to get ready for Beth's gala. The house was empty when I arrived. Beth's car was gone, probably at the salon getting ready for her big night. I showered, shaved, and put on the tuxedo she'd had tailored for me last Christmas. It fit perfectly, which somehow made it feel like a costume. Beth returned an hour later, transformed into the woman who'd caught my eye at a company Christmas party 8 years ago. Her blonde hair was swept up in an elegant style that showed off the diamond earrings I'd bought her for our anniversary. Her dress was black, simple, and probably cost more than most people made in a week. "You look beautiful," I said, and meant it. "Thank you. You look handsome, too." She adjusted my bow tie with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd been dressing men for formal events their entire life. "Remember, Amanda Voss will be there. She's important to my career." "I'll be charming. Just be yourself. The version of yourself that built a successful company, not the version that makes sarcastic comments about charity work." "Fair enough." The Riverside Foundation Gala was held at the Grand Ballroom of the Marriott downtown, the kind of event where people spent more on their outfits than most families spent on groceries in a month. The ballroom sparkled with crystal chandeliers and the jewelry of women who measured their worth in carats and social connections. Beth transformed the moment we walked through the doors. Her smile became brighter, her laugh more musical, her posture straighter. This was her element, the world of appearances and networking, where every conversation was a potential opportunity and every introduction a chance to climb higher on the social ladder. "There's Amanda," Beth whispered, nodding toward a woman in her early 40s standing near the bar. Amanda Voss was attractive in a professional way. Sharp suit, confident posture, the kind of woman who commanded attention without demanding it. "Come on, I'll introduce you." We made our way through the crowd, Beth greeting people with the enthusiasm of a politician at election time. She knew everyone's name, remembered their children's achievements, asked about their recent vacations. It was impressive in its way. "Amanda." Beth's voice carried just the right note of professional warmth. "I'd like you to meet my husband, Jim Parish. Jim, this is Amanda Voss, our new regional director." Amanda extended her hand with a firm grip and direct eye contact. "Mr. Parish, Beth talks about you constantly. You own an electrical company?" "Parish Brothers Electrical. We handle most of the commercial work in the county." "Impressive. I've seen your trucks around town. Beth tells me you're quite the entrepreneur." There was something in Amanda's tone, genuine interest rather than polite small talk. It had been so long since someone had shown real curiosity about my work that I found myself actually engaging in the conversation. "We've been lucky. Started small and grew with the market." "Luck had nothing to do with it," Beth interjected. "Jim works 18-hour days. Sometimes I barely see him." It was a lie, of course. I worked long hours during busy periods, but I was home for dinner most nights. Beth was rewriting history to fit whatever narrative she thought would impress her boss. "Well," Amanda said, "success requires sacrifice. I should know. I just went through a divorce myself. Career ambition isn't always compatible with marriage." There was an awkward silence. Beth's smile flickered for just a moment before returning to full wattage. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said. "Don't be. Best thing that ever happened to me. Turns out some people are better as friends than spouses. Amanda's eyes met mine for a moment longer than necessary. If you'll excuse me, I should make the rounds. Nice meeting you, Jim. She walked away, leaving Beth and me standing by the bar. She seems nice, I said. She's very professional, very focused on results. Beth's tone had cooled noticeably. Let's get some drinks. The evening progressed with the usual gala routine. Cocktails, dinner, speeches about the Foundation's important work, and an auction where people bid ridiculous amounts on vacation packages and signed sports memorabilia. Beth was in her element, working the room like a professional networker. I was not in my element. I never was at these things. Having fun? The voice belonged to Taylor Bishop, Beth's best friend and primary enabler. Taylor was the kind of woman who collected gossip like some people collected stamps, carefully cataloged and always ready to be shared at the most opportune moment. Absolutely, I lied. Nothing I enjoy more than watching people spend $5,000 on a weekend in Napa. You're terrible, Taylor laughed. Beth says you've been working too much lately, all those late nights at the office. Business is good, can't complain. Still, you should make time for fun. Life's too short. She gestured toward the dance floor where couples were swaying to a jazz quartet. When's the last time you and Beth danced? I couldn't remember. Literally couldn't remember the last time Beth and I had danced together or done anything together that wasn't related to maintaining the appearance of a happy marriage. It's been a while, I admitted. Well, fix that. She's your wife, not your business partner. The irony was that my actual business partner showed me more affection than my wife did. John might be ambitious and occasionally ruthless, but at least he was direct about it. With Beth, everything was subtext and suggestion, layers of meaning buried beneath polite conversation. Speaking of John, I spotted him across the room talking to a group of local business owners. He cleaned up well in a tuxedo, and he was holding court the way he always did, charming, confident, the center of attention. Several women were hanging on his every word, including a couple I recognized as wives of other contractors. John caught my eye and raised his glass in a mock salute. I returned the gesture, wondering why he was here at all. He'd never shown interest in Beth's charity work before. Jim? Beth appeared at my elbow, her voice carrying a note of command. Dance with me. It wasn't a request. She was already leading me toward the dance floor, her hand on my arm with just enough pressure to make refusal impossible. The jazz quartet was playing something slow and romantic, the kind of song that was supposed to make couples feel connected. Smile, Beth whispered as we began to dance. People are watching. People are always watching, that's the problem. Don't start. Not here. We moved through the motions of dancing, our bodies close but somehow not touching in any meaningful way. Beth's smile never wavered, but her eyes were scanning the room, making sure we were being seen by the right people. This is ridiculous, I said quietly. What's ridiculous? This. Us. Pretending to be something we're not. We're not pretending. We're being civilized. We're being fake. Beth's smile tightened. Lower your voice. Why? Afraid someone might realize we're not actually happy? I'm afraid someone might realize you're being a jerk. The song ended, but instead of staying for another dance, I stepped away from Beth. I need some air. Jim, don't... But I was already walking away, leaving her standing on the dance floor with her perfect smile and her perfect dress and her perfectly constructed façade. I made it as far as the bar before Amanda Voss intercepted me. Trouble in paradise? She asked, not unkindly. Something like that. Want to talk about it, or would you prefer to drink about it? I looked back at Beth, who was now talking to Taylor, both of them shooting glances in my direction. Actually, would you like to dance? Amanda raised an eyebrow. With the man who just walked away from his wife on the dance floor? With the man who just remembered what it feels like to have an honest conversation. She studied my face for a moment, then set down her wine glass. All right, but if she comes over here and makes a scene, you're on your own. Deal. Amanda was a good dancer, better than Beth. More importantly, she was present, not scanning the room, not performing for an audience, just dancing. We moved easily together, and for the first time all evening, I felt like I could breathe. So, she said, want to tell me what that was about? Marriage is complicated. That's what people say when they don't want to admit it's not working. Her directness was refreshing. You're very blunt. Life's too short for subtlety. I learned that during my divorce. Spent 2 years trying to fix something that was broken from the start, all because I was afraid of admitting failure. And now? Now I'm happier than I've been in years. Turns out being alone is better than being lonely in a relationship. The song ended, but neither of us moved to leave the dance floor. I could see Beth watching us from across the room, her expression unreadable. "Thank you for the dance," I said. "Thank you for the honesty. It's rarer than you might think." Amanda smiled. "If you ever want to continue that conversation, I'm in the book." She walked away, leaving me standing on the dance floor with the distinct feeling that something important had just happened. I wasn't sure what, exactly, but for the first time in months, I felt like myself again. Beth appeared at my side moments later, her smile strained. "Ready to go?" she asked. "Sure." We didn't speak during the drive home. Beth stared out the passenger window while I navigated the empty streets, both of us lost in our own thoughts. It wasn't until we were in our bedroom, changing out of our formal wear, that she finally broke the silence. "That was embarrassing." "What was embarrassing?" "You walking away from me, dancing with my boss, making me look like a fool." I hung up my tuxedo jacket and turned to face her. I danced with Amanda because she's interesting, because she actually wanted to talk to me, not just use me as a prop. "She's my boss, Jim. My career." "Your career?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Beth, you work part-time planning parties. It's not exactly a career." Her face flushed. "Just because I don't spend 18 hours a day at an office doesn't mean my work isn't important." "You're right. I'm sorry. That was unfair." But the damage was done. Beth turned away from me, and I knew that whatever small chance we'd had of fixing things had just evaporated. We went to bed the same way we had for the past 6 months, on opposite sides of the mattress, 18 inches apart, surrounded by silence that screamed louder than any argument. I lay awake for hours, thinking about Amanda's words. Being alone is better than being lonely in a relationship. I was starting to understand what she meant. The following Monday brought the kind of gray October morning that made you want to crawl back into bed and wait for spring. I arrived at the office early, hoping to lose myself in work and forget about the awkwardness of Saturday night. Beth had barely spoken to me all day Sunday, communicating primarily through pointed silences and strategic door closing. Mary was already at her desk, nursing coffee and sorting through the weekend's messages. "Morning, boss. You look like hell." "Thanks. That's exactly what every man wants to hear on a Monday morning." "Rough weekend?" "You could say that." Mary had been with the company long enough to recognize the signs of domestic trouble. She'd watched me go through the early days with Beth, had seen the gradual shift from newlywed happiness to whatever this was. She never offered unsolicited advice, but her observations were usually accurate. "John's already here," she said. "Been in his office since 6:30. Again." That made 3 weeks in a row of John's early morning routine. My brother had always been ambitious, but this level of dedication to paperwork was suspicious. John was a people person, a schmoozer. He did his best work in restaurants and bars, not hunched over spreadsheets in an empty office. I knocked on his door and found him at his desk, surrounded by project files and looking like he hadn't slept much. "You're here early again." "Couldn't sleep. Figured I might as well be productive." He gestured to the papers spread across his desk. "Morrison project is getting complicated. Client wants to add electrical for 3 more buildings, but they want to keep the same timeline." "That's impossible." "That's what I told them. They're not happy." John rubbed his eyes and leaned back in his chair. There was something different about him lately, a distracted quality that was unlike his usual focused intensity. He'd always been the brother who could juggle 6 different projects while planning his next vacation, but now he seemed scattered. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah, just tired. Been working too much, I guess." "Maybe you should take some time off. When's the last time you took a real vacation?" "I don't know. A year? 2 years?" John shuffled the papers on his desk. "How was Beth's thing Saturday night?" "Fine. Typical charity gala. Overpriced drinks and underwhelming speeches." "She looked great, though. Beth, I mean. Saw the pictures on Facebook." This was odd. John wasn't on Facebook, and he'd never shown much interest in Beth's social media presence. "You saw pictures?" "Taylor tagged me in something. You know how she is with that stuff." Taylor Bishop was indeed prolific with social media, documenting every social event like a professional photographer, but I couldn't remember John ever being tagged in anything related to Beth's activities. "Right," I said. "Well, I should let you get back to work." "Jim?" John looked up from his paperwork. "You and Beth are good, right? I mean, you guys seem happy." The question caught me off guard. John and I had never been the type of brothers who discussed our relationships in detail. We talked about business, sports, occasionally politics. Personal problems were handled privately. "We're fine," I lied. "Why?" "No reason. Just, marriage is hard work. takes effort from both people. Since when are you an expert on marriage? You haven't been in a serious relationship since Sarah, and that was 3 years ago. John's expression darkened. Just because I'm not married doesn't mean I don't understand relationships. There was an edge to his voice that I'd rarely heard. John was usually easygoing, quick to laugh off any tension. This defensive tone was new. You're right. Sorry, I'm just tired. We're all tired, John said. Maybe we both need to work on that. I left his office feeling unsettled. The conversation had been strange, full of undercurrents I couldn't quite identify. John's interest in my marriage, his early morning work sessions, his general air of distraction, it all felt connected somehow, but I couldn't see the pattern. The rest of the morning passed in the usual blur of phone calls and problem solving. Carl Robertson stopped by to discuss staffing for the Morrison project, and Connie wanted to review our quarterly numbers. Normal business, the kind of routine challenges that usually energized me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. It was like sensing a storm before you could see the clouds, that electric tension in the air that warned of trouble coming. My phone buzzed with a text message. Beth. Having lunch with Amanda today, discussing new project opportunities. This was unusual. Beth rarely texted me during the day unless she needed something, and she'd never mentioned having lunch with her boss before. Amanda Voss had seemed nice enough at the gala, but Beth had been oddly territorial about her afterward. I was still thinking about the text when Mary knocked on my door. Jim, there's someone here to see you. Amanda Voss from the Riverside Foundation. Speak of the devil. Amanda walked into my office wearing a navy blue business suit and a smile that was both professional and somehow personal. She looked different than she had at the gala, more serious, more focused. Ms. Voss, this is a surprise. I hope you don't mind me stopping by unannounced. I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd take a chance. Not at all. Please, sit down. Can I get you coffee? That would be great, thank you. Mary brought coffee and closed the door behind her, leaving Amanda and me alone in my office. There was something about Amanda's presence that made the space feel smaller, more intimate. So, I said, what brings you to Parish Brothers Electrical? Actually, I wanted to talk to you about a project. The foundation is renovating an old warehouse downtown, turning it into a community center. We need electrical work done, and Beth suggested I talk to you directly. This was interesting. Beth had never shown much interest in my work, and she'd certainly never helped generate business for the company. That's very thoughtful of her. What kind of timeline are we looking at? That's the thing. We need it done quickly, and we need it done right. This project is important to the foundation, and to me personally, I can't afford to have any problems. Amanda leaned forward slightly, her eyes meeting mine. Beth speaks very highly of your work. She says you're the best contractor in the area. Beth said that? She did. She also said you're very dedicated to quality work. There was something in Amanda's tone that made me think we weren't entirely talking about electrical work anymore. Or maybe I was reading too much into it. 6 months of marital coldness had probably made me hypersensitive to any sign of female attention. We take pride in our work, I said carefully. I can see that. Your reputation speaks for itself. Amanda smiled. Would you be interested in looking at the project? I could show you the space this afternoon if you have time. I'd be happy to take a look. Excellent. Here's my card with my direct number. Call me when you're free, and we'll set something up. Amanda stood to leave, then paused at the door. Oh, and Jim, thank you for the dance Saturday night. It was the highlight of my evening. She was gone before I could respond, leaving me sitting in my office with her business card and the distinct impression that something significant had just happened. I looked at the card. Amanda Voss, Regional Director, with her phone number written in neat handwriting. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Beth. Lunch was great. Amanda had lots of interesting things to say. I stared at the message, trying to decode its meaning. Beth's texts were usually straightforward. Grocery lists, schedule reminders, requests for money. This one felt loaded with subtext. The rest of the day passed slowly. I found myself thinking about Amanda's visit, about her comment regarding the dance, about the way she'd looked at me when she talked about dedication to quality work. It had been so long since a woman had shown genuine interest in me that I wasn't sure how to interpret the signals. At 5:30, I headed home to find Beth in the kitchen, preparing what looked like an elaborate dinner. This was unusual. Beth's idea of cooking typically involved takeout menus and microwave instructions. Smells good, I said. Chicken marsala. I thought we could have a nice dinner together. What's the occasion? Do I need an occasion to cook for my husband? Yes, I thought, but didn't say it. Of course not. It's just unexpected. I've been thinking about what you said Saturday night, about us pretending to be something we're not. Beth turned from the stove to face me. Maybe we have been going through the motions lately. Maybe? Okay, definitely. But I want to fix that. I want us to be better. She moved closer to me, close enough that I could smell her perfume. It was the same scent she'd worn on our first date, light and floral with a hint of something more exotic. I've missed you, she said softly. The words should have made me happy. For 6 months, I'd been waiting for some sign that Beth still cared about our marriage, still wanted to work on our relationship. Now here she was, offering exactly what I'd been hoping for. So why did it feel wrong? I've missed you too, I said, because it was true, even if it wasn't the whole truth. Beth smiled and kissed me, a real kiss, not the perfunctory peck on the cheek that had become our standard greeting. For a moment, it felt like the old days when we'd actually been happy together. But even as I kissed her back, part of my mind was wondering about the timing. Why today? Why now? Just hours after Amanda's visit to my office. Dinner will be ready in 20 minutes, Beth said. Why don't you go shower and change? I headed upstairs, my mind racing. Beth's sudden affection, her lunch with Amanda, the mysterious dinner. It all felt connected somehow, but I couldn't see the pattern. It was like looking at an electrical circuit with half the wires hidden behind walls. You knew there was a connection, but you couldn't trace the current. The shower was hot and relaxing, washing away the tension of the day. By the time I came downstairs, Beth had set the dining room table with our good china and lit candles. She'd changed into a dress I hadn't seen in months, something that actually showed she had a body underneath all those conservative outfits. This looks amazing, I said, and meant it. I wanted tonight to be special. We ate dinner like a normal couple, talking about our days, sharing stories, laughing at each other's jokes. It was the first real conversation we'd had in months, and it reminded me why I'd fallen in love with Beth in the first place. She was smart, funny, charming when she wanted to be. But underneath the pleasant dinner conversation, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being managed. Beth was working too hard, trying too deliberately to recreate something that had once come naturally. It felt like a performance, beautifully executed but somehow hollow. After dinner, we moved to the living room with wine. Beth curled up next to me on the couch, closer than she'd been in months. I had an interesting lunch today, she said. Oh, with Amanda? She's very impressive, very driven. She told me some fascinating things about her divorce. Such as how liberating it was, how much happier she is now, how she wishes she'd done it sooner. Beth's hand was resting on my chest, her fingers tracing small circles through my shirt. She also mentioned that you two had quite a conversation at the gala. We danced, we talked. She seems nice. She is nice. She's also very attractive and very available. I wasn't sure where this conversation was heading, but I didn't like the direction. Beth, what are you getting at? Nothing, just making an observation. She looked up at me with those blue eyes that had first caught my attention 8 years ago. I'd hate for you to get the wrong idea about her interest in you. What kind of wrong idea? The kind that might make you think you have options you don't actually have. And there it was. The real reason for the elaborate dinner, the sudden affection, the intimate conversation. Beth had somehow found out about Amanda's visit to my office, and this entire evening was her way of marking her territory. I'm not sure I understand, I said, though I understood perfectly. I think you do. Beth sat up, her expression hardening slightly. Amanda is my boss, Jim. My career depends on maintaining a good relationship with her. I can't have my husband complicating that. How would I complicate it? By misinterpreting professional courtesy as personal interest. By embarrassing me the way you did Saturday night. The mask was slipping now. The loving wife act was giving way to something colder, more calculating. This wasn't about saving our marriage. It was about controlling the situation. I see, I said. Do you? Because I need to know that you understand how important this is. The foundation is finally giving me real responsibilities, real opportunities for advancement. I can't have you sabotaging that because you're going through some kind of midlife crisis. Midlife crisis? What would you call it? You've been moody for months, distant, critical of everything I do. And now you're flirting with my boss at public events. I stood up from the couch, the wine glass in my hand suddenly feeling heavy. Beth, I wasn't flirting with anyone. I was having a conversation with another human being. Remember those? Conversations? Don't be dramatic. I'm not being dramatic. I'm being honest. Something you might want to try sometime. Beth's eyes flashed with anger. What's that supposed to mean? It means this whole evening has been bullshit. The dinner, the wine, the sudden affection, it's all just you trying to manipulate the situation. I'm trying to save our marriage. No, you're trying to control it. There's a difference. I headed for the stairs, leaving Beth sitting on the couch with her perfectly planned evening falling apart around her. Jim, wait. I stopped but didn't turn around. I love you, she said, but her voice was flat, mechanical. The words sounded like something she'd read in a script. I love you too, I replied, because it was still true, even if it was no longer enough. I went to bed alone that night, listening to Beth moving around downstairs, cleaning up the remnants of her failed performance. When she finally came to bed an hour later, she positioned herself on her side of the mattress, exactly 18 inches away, and we returned to the silence that had become our normal routine. But something had changed. The evening had clarified things in a way I hadn't expected. Beth wasn't trying to fix our marriage, she was trying to manage it. And for the first time in months, I was starting to think that might not be enough anymore. I lay awake until dawn, thinking about Amanda's words from the gala. Being alone is better than being lonely in a relationship. I was beginning to understand what she meant. Tuesday morning brought the kind of autumn rain that made everything look gray and depressing. I arrived at the office soaked and irritable, having forgotten my umbrella in my rush to escape the house before Beth woke up. We hadn't spoken since our argument the night before, and I wasn't in any hurry to continue that conversation. Mary looked up from her desk as I dripped water across the reception area. Rough morning? Getting worse by the minute. Well, here's something to cheer you up. Amanda Voss called. Wants to know if you can meet her at the warehouse project this afternoon, 2:00. I felt a small surge of anticipation, followed immediately by guilt. Amanda was Beth's boss, and getting involved in any kind of relationship, professional or otherwise, was bound to create complications. But the prospect of spending time with someone who actually seemed interested in talking to me was too appealing to ignore. Tell her I'll be there. Will do. Oh, and Jim? Your brother wants to see you when you get a chance. He seems agitated. John's office door was closed, which usually meant he was on an important call or dealing with a crisis. I knocked and heard his voice, muffled but clearly stressed. Come in. John was pacing behind his desk, his phone pressed to his ear. He looked like he'd been up all night, his usually perfect hair disheveled and his shirt wrinkled. No, that's not acceptable, he was saying into the phone. We had an agreement. I don't care what your lawyer says. Fine. We'll discuss this later. He hung up and threw the phone onto his desk with more force than necessary. Problems? I asked. You could say that. Morrison project is falling apart. Client wants to renegotiate the contract, cut our fee by 30%. Can they do that? Legally, probably not. Practically, they're threatening to find another contractor if we don't agree. This was bad news. The Morrison project represented nearly $200,000 in revenue, money we'd already counted on for the fourth quarter. Losing it would mean layoffs, canceled bonuses, and a very uncomfortable conversation with our bank. What are our options? John slumped into his chair, suddenly looking older than his 43 years. Fight them in court and probably win, but spend 6 months and $20,000 in legal fees. Or take the reduced contract and hope we can make up the difference somewhere else. There has to be a third option. If there is, I can't see it. I studied my brother's face, noting the stress lines around his eyes and the way his hands trembled slightly as he reached for his coffee cup. John had always been the optimistic one, the brother who saw opportunity in every setback. This defeated version of him was unsettling. John, what's really going on? This isn't just about Morrison. He looked up at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. What do you mean? I mean, you've been acting strange for weeks, coming in early, staying late, distracted during meetings, and now you're falling apart over a contract dispute that we could handle in our sleep. I'm fine, just stressed about business. Bullshit. I've known you for 43 years. This isn't about business. John stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the rain. For a long moment, he didn't speak. When he finally turned back to me, his expression was pained. You're right. It's not just about business. He paused, seeming to weigh his words carefully. Jim, there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you weeks ago. My stomach clenched. Whatever John was about to say, I already knew I didn't want to hear it. I've been seeing someone, he said quietly. Okay, that's good, right? You've been single too long. It's complicated. How complicated? John turned back to the window, unable to meet my eyes. She's married. The pieces were starting to fall into place. The early mornings, the distracted behavior, the stress that went beyond business problems. John was having an affair, which explained a lot about his recent behavior. What it didn't explain was why he looked like he was about to throw up. "John, that's not like you. You've never been the type to get involved with married women." I know it's wrong, but it just happened, and now it's gotten complicated." "How complicated?" "She wants to leave her husband. She thinks we have a future together." "And you don't?" "I don't know. Maybe. But it would mean destroying her marriage, breaking up a family. I'm not sure I can live with that." I felt a wave of sympathy for my brother. John had always been a good guy underneath the charm and ambition. The fact that he was torturing himself over an affair showed that his conscience was still intact. "Who is she?" I asked. John's shoulders tensed. "I can't tell you that. Not yet. Maybe not ever." "Is she someone I know?" "Jim, please, don't ask me that." The way he said it, the pain in his voice, the refusal to meet my eyes, sent a chill down my spine. John wasn't just having an affair with a married woman. He was having an affair with a married woman I knew. Jesus, John, tell me it's not someone from the company. "It's not someone from the company." "Then who?" I stopped, my mind racing through possibilities. John's social circle overlapped with mine in predictable ways. We knew the same business owners, went to the same restaurants, attended the same events. If he was involved with someone I knew, the list of candidates was relatively short, and then, like a lightning bolt, it hit me. "No," I said, the word coming out as barely a whisper. John's face went white. "Jim, no, tell me I'm wrong. I can't. I'm sorry, but I can't." The office seemed to tilt around me. I gripped the back of a chair to steady myself, my mind reeling with the implications of what John wasn't saying. "How long?" I asked. 3 months, maybe 4. 4 months. Right around the time Beth had started being cold and distant, right around the time she'd stopped touching me, stopped talking to me, stopped being my wife in any meaningful way. "Does she love you?" John's voice was barely audible. "She says she does." I felt something break inside my chest, a physical sensation like a wire snapping under too much current. 8 years of marriage, 12 years of partnership with my brother, and it all came down to this moment in a gray office on a rainy Tuesday morning. "Get out," I said quietly. "Jim, let me explain. Get out of my office. Get out of my building. Get out of my life. Please, just listen. Get out." John flinched as if I'd hit him. He grabbed his jacket from the back of his chair and headed for the door, pausing only to look back at me with an expression of pure misery. "I never meant for this to happen," he said, "but it did happen, and you let it happen. Both of you." After he left, I sat alone in his office for a long time, staring at the rain and trying to process what I'd just learned. My wife was having an affair with my brother. The two people I'd trusted most in the world had been lying to me for months, sneaking around behind my back, planning a future that didn't include me. The early morning meetings suddenly made sense. Beth's sudden interest in my work schedule, her questions about when I'd be home, her mysterious errands and lunch dates. John's distracted behavior, his stress about complicated relationships, his intimate knowledge of Beth's social media posts. They'd been playing me for a fool, and I'd been too blind to see it. My phone buzzed with a text message. Amanda Voss. "Looking forward to seeing you this afternoon. The warehouse project is going to be exciting." I stared at the message, remembering Beth's warning about misinterpreting Amanda's professional courtesy as personal interest. Now I understood why Beth had been so concerned. It wasn't about protecting her career. It was about protecting her affair. I typed back, "Me too. See you at 2. If Beth wanted to play games, I could play games too, and I was about to become very good at it. The warehouse Amanda had chosen for the community center was a massive brick building in the arts district downtown, the kind of space that had probably housed manufacturing equipment 50 years ago and was now being converted into something more modern and socially conscious. Amanda was waiting for me in the parking lot, wearing jeans and a work shirt that somehow looked more attractive than most women's formal wear. "Thanks for meeting me," she said, extending her hand. I know this was short notice. "Not a problem. I needed to get out of the office anyway." She studied my face with the kind of perceptive look that suggested she could read more than I was saying. "Rough day?" "You could say that. Want to talk about it, or would you prefer to focus on electrical systems?" "Let's start with electrical systems and see where we end up." Amanda smiled and led me toward the building. Fair enough. The warehouse was impressive. 30,000 square feet of open space with exposed brick walls, high ceilings, and enormous windows that let in streams of natural light despite the gray day outside. It was the kind of space that inspired big dreams and ambitious plans. "What are you thinking for layout?" I asked. "Community meeting rooms, computer lab, after-school program space, maybe a small theater for local productions." Amanda gestured toward different areas as she spoke, her enthusiasm evident. We want this to be a real resource for the neighborhood, not just another empty building with good intentions. We spent an hour walking through the space, discussing electrical requirements, code compliance, and timeline considerations. Amanda was knowledgeable about construction, asking the right questions, and understanding the implications of my answers. It was the kind of professional conversation I'd been hoping to have with Beth for years. "This is a great project," I said as we finished our tour. "The kind of thing that actually makes a difference in people's lives." "That's the goal. I've seen too many community development projects that look good on paper but don't actually serve the community they're supposed to help." "Speaking from experience?" "Unfortunately, yes. My previous job was with a foundation in Chicago. Lots of ribbon cuttings and press releases, not much actual impact." We were standing near the large windows at the front of the building, looking out at the street where people were hurrying through the rain with umbrellas and briefcases. Normal people living normal lives, dealing with normal problems. I envied them. "Amanda, can I ask you something personal?" "Shoot." "When you got divorced, how did you know it was time? I mean, what was the moment when you realized it was over?" She turned to look at me directly, her expression serious. "When I realized I was happier when he wasn't around. When coming home felt like a chore instead of a relief. When I started making excuses to avoid spending time with the person I was supposed to love most in the world." Every word hit like a physical blow. "That's specific. It's also true. Marriage is supposed to enhance your life, not diminish it. When it becomes the thing you're trying to escape from, it's time to make a change. Even if it means admitting failure? Jim, staying in a marriage that makes you miserable isn't noble. It's just stubborn, and it's not fair to either person." We stood in silence for a moment, watching the rain streak down the windows. Amanda's honesty was both comforting and terrifying. She was giving me permission to think thoughts I'd been trying to suppress for months. "There's something else," I said. "Something I found out today." "Do you want to tell me about it?" So I did. I told her about John's confession, about the affair, about the months of lies and deception. I told her about Beth's sudden interest in controlling my relationship with Amanda, about the elaborate dinner that was really just a manipulation. I told her everything, and Amanda listened without judgment or surprise. "I'm sorry," she said when I finished. "That's a terrible way to find out. The worst part is, I'm not even that surprised. Deep down, I think I knew something was wrong. I just didn't want to see it. That's natural. We protect ourselves from truths we're not ready to handle." "So what do I do now?" Amanda was quiet for a long moment, considering her words carefully. "What do you want to do?" "I want to burn it all down. The marriage, the business partnership, everything. I want them to pay for what they've done." "That's anger talking. Anger is useful, but it's not a strategy." "Then what is?" "Patience, planning, and most importantly, making sure you don't become the villain in your own story." She was right, of course. Acting on impulse would only give Beth and John ammunition to use against me. If I was going to fight back, I needed to be smart about it. "Amanda, why are you helping me? You barely know me, and this situation could complicate things with Beth." She smiled, but there was something sad in her expression. "Because I've been where you are. Because I know what it feels like to have your trust betrayed by the people you love most, and because—" She paused, seeming to weigh her words. "Because I like you, Jim. You're honest and decent and funny, and those are rare qualities. Even when I'm a mess? Especially when you're a mess. It means you're human." We exchanged phone numbers and made plans for me to submit a bid on the electrical work. As I walked back to my truck, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Hope. Not for my marriage, that was clearly over, but for the possibility that there might be life after Beth, that I might actually be happy again someday. My phone rang as I was driving back to the office. Beth. "Hi, honey. How was your day?" The casual tone, the fake cheerfulness, it all sounded different now that I knew the truth. "Fine. Busy. I was thinking we could go out to dinner tonight. That new Italian place downtown." "Why? Do I need a reason to want to spend time with my husband?" "Yes," I thought. "You absolutely need a reason, because you haven't wanted to spend time with me in months." "I'm pretty tired, Beth. Maybe another night." "Oh, okay." There was a pause, and I could practically hear her recalculating. "Well, maybe we could just order pizza and watch a movie." "Sure. Whatever you want." "Great. I'll order from that place you like. See you at home." She hung up, and I realized that this was probably part of some strategy she and John had worked out. Keep Jim happy, keep him distracted, keep him from asking too many questions while they figured out their next move. Well, I had news for them. I was done being managed. I spent the rest of the afternoon at the office working on bids and trying to act normal around the staff. Mary kept giving me concerned looks, and Connie asked if I was feeling okay, but I managed to maintain the appearance of business as usual. At 6 o'clock, I headed home to find Beth in the kitchen, bustling around with the kind of domestic energy she usually reserved for impressing guests. She'd changed into a casual dress that showed off her figure, and her hair was styled in a way that looked effortless, but probably took an hour to achieve. "Pizza should be here in 20 minutes, she said, kissing me on the cheek. "How was your day? You sounded tired on the phone." "Just the usual. Meetings, site visits, paperwork." "Anything interesting?" I almost laughed. Beth hadn't asked about my work in months, and now she was suddenly interested in the details of my day. "Not really. Oh, I did meet with Amanda Voss about a project for the foundation." Beth's smile faltered for just a moment. "Really? She didn't mention that when I talked to her today." "You talked to Amanda today?" "Just briefly. Foundation business?" Beth turned back to the stove where she was heating up garlic bread. "What kind of project?" "Community center renovation, electrical work. Could be a good contract for us." "That's nice." The pizza arrived, and we ate dinner while watching a romantic comedy that Beth had chosen. She curled up next to me on the couch, her head on my shoulder, playing the role of loving wife with Academy Award-level commitment. "I love you," she said during a commercial break. "I love you too," I replied automatically. But the words felt hollow, meaningless. Love wasn't supposed to be a weapon or a manipulation tactic. Love was supposed to be honest, supportive, genuine. What Beth and I had wasn't love anymore. It was just habit and fear and the desperate desire to avoid admitting failure. After the movie, we went to bed together for the first time in weeks. Beth was affectionate, attentive, everything I'd been missing for months. Under different circumstances, I might have been grateful for the attention, might have seen it as a sign that our marriage was healing. Instead, I lay awake afterward, listening to Beth's breathing and thinking about John's confession. 3 months, maybe 4. Right around the time Beth had started pulling away from me, she'd been getting closer to my brother. Every rejection, every cold shoulder, every excuse about being too tired or too busy. It had all been because she was getting her needs met elsewhere. The betrayal was complete. Not just the affair itself, but the months of lies that had accompanied it. The gaslighting, the manipulation, the way they'd made me feel like I was the problem, like I was the one who wasn't trying hard enough to save our marriage. Well, I was done trying. Tomorrow, I was going to start fighting back. And Beth and John had no idea what was coming. I fell asleep planning my revenge, and for the first time in months, I slept soundly through the night. The next morning, I woke up early and headed to the office before Beth was awake. I had work to do, and I didn't want any interruptions. The first step was gathering information, understanding exactly what John and Beth had been doing, how long it had been going on, and what their plans were for the future. Mary was already at her desk when I arrived, nursing her first cup of coffee and sorting through the morning mail. "You're here early," she said. "Couldn't sleep. Too much on my mind." "Want to talk about it?" Mary had been with the company long enough to become more than just an employee. She was a friend, a confidant, someone who genuinely cared about the success of Parish Brothers Electrical. If I was going to start making changes, I'd need allies. "Mary, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." "Okay." "Have you noticed anything strange about John's behavior lately? Anything that seemed off or unusual?" Mary set down her coffee cup and looked at me carefully. "What kind of strange?" "I don't know. Different schedule, personal phone calls, meetings that don't show up on the calendar." "Jim, are you asking me to spy on your brother?" "I'm asking you to tell me if you've noticed anything that might affect the business." She was quiet for a long moment, weighing her loyalty to the company against her discomfort with the situation. Finally, she sighed. "There have been some things. Phone calls that he takes in his office with the door closed, meetings that aren't on the books, and..." She paused, looking uncomfortable. "And what?" "A couple of times, I've seen him leaving the office with someone. A woman. They seemed... close." My heart started beating faster. What did she look like? "Blonde, pretty, well-dressed. I assumed she was a client or a vendor, but they didn't act professional, if you know what I mean." I knew exactly what she meant. "Mary, I need you to do me a favor. If John schedules any more off-the-books meetings, I want to know about them. And if he leaves the office with anyone, I want to know about that too." "Jim, what's going on?" "I can't tell you everything right now, but I will soon. I just need to know that I can count on you." "Of course you can count on me. You know that?" "Thank you." The rest of the morning passed in a blur of routine business, but my mind was focused on strategy. I needed to understand the full scope of Beth and John's relationship before I could decide how to respond. Were they planning to leave their respective situations and start a new life together? Was John planning to push me out of the business? Was Beth planning to file for divorce and try to take half of everything I'd built? At lunch, I drove to a coffee shop across town and called Amanda from my truck. "Hi, Jim. How are you holding up?" "Better than yesterday. I've been thinking about what you said about not becoming the villain in my own story." "Good. That's important." "I want to handle this right, but I also want to make sure they don't get away with it. Is that wrong?" "Not at all. There's a difference between justice and revenge. Justice is about making things right. Revenge is about making people hurt." "What if I want both?" Amanda laughed, but not unkindly. "Then you're human. Just make sure you don't let the revenge part override the justice part." "I won't. But Amanda, I'm going to need help. I can't do this alone." "What kind of help?" "I need someone I can trust, someone who's not involved in the situation but understands what I'm going through." "Are you asking me to be your ally in whatever you're planning?" "I guess I am." There was a long pause. "Jim, you know this could complicate things for me professionally. Beth is still my employee." "I know, and I understand if you can't get involved." "I didn't say I couldn't get involved. I said it could complicate things." Another pause. "But sometimes the right thing to do is also the complicated thing to do." "So you'll help me?" "I'll help you, but we do this smart, and we do this clean. No illegal activity, no unethical behavior, no actions we can't justify later." "Agreed." "Good. So what's the plan?" I looked out at the parking lot, watching people go about their normal lives, and felt a surge of determination. Beth and John thought they were so clever, so careful, so much smarter than the husband and brother they were betraying. They were about to learn otherwise. "The plan," I said, "is to give them exactly what they deserve." And for the first time in months, I smiled. I didn't walk out of that call with Amanda feeling like a victim anymore. I felt like a man who'd finally found the breaker box in a dark building. I hadn't flipped any, I didn't know which switches I would flip yet. But for the first time, I knew exactly where they were. Revenge, like electrical work, starts with assessment. You don't rip out wires until you know what they power and what might explode. So I began with a lawyer. Not our corporate guy, the one Amanda used in her divorce. "Mean in the right way," she'd said. Her name was Dana Patel, and her office smelled like old paper and strong coffee. When I finished telling her everything, she asked only one thing. "What do you want, legally?" "I want out of the marriage. I want the company safe, and I don't want either of them walking away clean." She nodded. "Good. Anger makes people sloppy. Sloppy loses." Then she gave me the plan. Secure all corporate documents and banking access, gather evidence, and clean, legal, undeniable. File for divorce first. Quietly remove John from any position that could hurt the company, and most important, no confrontations until the time is right. I promised I could pretend a little longer. The next week was paperwork and preparation. Connie handled the numbers. Mary handled the people. Friday afternoon, Mary appeared in my doorway. "John has an off-site meeting, not on the calendar. He said he'd meet her there." She gave me a sticky note. A hotel off the highway. The kind used for short stays and long regrets. I went. At 1:55 p.m., John arrived. At 2:03 p.m., Beth pulled in. Separate cars, separate door, matching gilt. I took photos, plates, cars, the hotel sign, timestamps. Then I sat in my truck and breathed. If I confronted them now, they'd twist it into my meltdown. So I waited. An hour and 20 minutes later, they came out. The same rehearsed exit, the same cowardly distance. I filmed that too. By the time I drove away, whatever part of me still believed in them was gone. Dana flipped through the photos that evening. "Perfect," she said. "Plain, factual, court-ready." "It feels like a bad streaming movie," I muttered. "Bad movies cost money," she said. "This won't. Now keep acting normal until we're ready." "That's easier than it should be," I said. "I don't feel married anymore." "That's numbness," she warned. "Anger will come back. When it does, call me, not them." She tapped the folder shut. "And Jim, you're doing this the right way." For the first time in months, I believed her. Beth threw herself into the role of devoted wife, with the same energy she used at charity galas. For 2 weeks she cooked dinners, suggested movie nights, texted memes, said "I love you" until it sounded mechanical. If I hadn't known better, I might have believed she was trying. But the pattern was obvious now. Every sudden burst of affection aligned perfectly with one of John's off-site meetings or her late committee nights. She wasn't loving me. She was silencing alarms while the fire raged somewhere else. I played my part with John, too. Meetings, deadlines, budget arguments. He tried to act normal, Jokes, shoulder pats, casual charm. I responded just enough, but inside I was already rewiring the company. I visited our key clients personally, shifted major decisions from his hands to mine, pulled Carl deeper into leadership, not as John's deputy, but as the future operations director. Officially, John was overworked. Unofficially, I needed to know who could hold the flashlight when the lights went out. One evening he tried to talk. "You've been different," he said. "We're fine," I told him. "Same as always." He wanted to believe that. I let him. 3 weeks after the motel, we had enough. Photos and videos, call logs, mismatched schedules, confirmed ownership documents, and a full strategy from Dana to push John out and end the marriage cleanly. Time to flip the breaker. I scheduled an extraordinary strategy meeting. Everyone came, me, John, Connie, Carl, and Mary. We began with the Morrison contract. Then I changed the slide. Not numbers, a photo. The motel, 2 cars, 2 familiar plates. The room froze. "This," I said, "is how personal choices can destroy a business." John went white. He asked to talk privately. I told him no. More photos. More timestamps. The evidence played like a grim slideshow. Connie looked heartbroken. Carl looked nauseous. Mary couldn't meet his eyes. "This isn't one mistake," I said. "It's a pattern." Then I turned off the projector. "Effective today, you're removed as CEO." "You can't," he whispered. "I can," I said. "And we're voting." 4 votes to 1. "You're still a shareholder," I told him. "For now. We'll offer you a buyout. Take it quietly, or we go to court, and everything you've done becomes public record." He had no answer. Confronting Beth was easier. Wednesday night, dinner, wine, a quiet house. "John is no longer COO," I said. She blinked. Too fast. "What happened?" I slid an envelope across the table. Inside, printed photos. The motel, the cars, the timeline. Her first reaction wasn't guilt. It was calculation. "This isn't what you—" "Beth," I said, "don't." I showed her the divorce draft. "The house is yours, the car is yours. We'll negotiate the rest through lawyers." "You're just letting everything go?" she asked, half offended, half relieved. "Nothing about this is easy," I said. "I'm choosing the pain I can live with." "And John?" she whispered. "He'll get a check and a door," I said. "No more safety net." She stared at me. "You don't love me anymore." "I love the woman I married," I said. "I don't know where she went." I took a pillow and a few shirts and slept in the office that night, on the old cot John and I used years ago when trust still existed. Now only the company remained. The next 2 months were quiet. No screaming, no theatrics, no dramatic social media posts, just lawyers, paperwork, signatures. We filed for divorce first. The structure stayed, the house for her, the business for me. Clean, controlled, final. John was sent an official offer to buy out his share. After a couple of sleepless nights and one conversation with his own lawyer, he agreed. At the office, we announced that John was leaving for personal reasons and wanted to take a break. No details. People already knew more than they said out loud. Gradually, his name stopped appearing on new contracts. His parking space was taken by a new white van we bought for an additional crew. His desk in the office remained empty. Sometimes I caught employees' glances at me. In those glances were pity, support, and that very curiosity that makes people watch accident news. But not a single person left. Not a single key client canceled their contract with us. The business survived it. So did I. Amanda kept her distance the whole time, close enough for me to know I wasn't alone, and far enough that no one could accuse her of stealing me away. We texted about the warehouse project, about schedules, about grants. Sometimes about nighttime insomnia, about how life changes after betrayal, about the strange lightness that comes after the hardest decisions. 6 months after I saw their cars at the hotel, the divorce wasn't officially final yet. The system loves paper slowness. But the main thing had already happened. I lived alone in a small but bright apartment downtown. Beth lived in the house I no longer called mine. John lived, I don't know, we didn't talk. He had a check for a substantial sum and a life he had to figure out himself. One evening, returning from a site, I was driving past the old warehouse we were converting into a community center. The light inside was on. Warm, steady, right. Outside was a gray, damp day. Inside, voices, laughter, the sound of balls, the rustle of laptops. I stopped, got out, looked inside. In the large hall, teenagers were playing basketball. In another room, someone was conducting computer classes. In a small studio, a woman was teaching a group of people yoga. Amanda was standing at the reception desk talking to some elderly man and laughing. That same laugh that didn't have a gram of falseness. She saw me through the glass, excused herself from her conversation partner, and came out. "Checking my wiring?" she asked. "Inspecting the load distribution," I answered. "Looks stable." "We have excellent contractors," she said. "They know what they're doing." For a while, we just stood side by side, watching a young girl show an older woman how to send an email. "How are you?" she asked. "More alone than lonely," I said. "That's progress already." She nodded. "Is the divorce almost complete?" she asked. "Almost," I said. "The documents are already so thick they could be used as building material." "And the business?" "Standing on its own feet," I said. "Carl is now officially Chief Operating Officer. Connie controls the numbers in ways I never could. I'm doing what I started with: systems, planning, diagrams. Only now the diagrams aren't just cables, but people." "And how is it? Do you like it?" "More than I expected," I said. "No one's keeping me as a decorative dog at events anymore." She smiled. "And Beth?" she asked quietly. "Beth is doing what she's always done," I said. "Surviving in a world where everything is a façade. I hope someday she'll understand that a façade without a foundation is worth nothing. But that's no longer my task." We fell silent. I looked at her. You were right," I said. "About what exactly?" she asked. "Being alone really is better than being lonely in a relationship," I said. "But there's one more thing." "What?" "Sometimes the best thing is to be among people who are honest with themselves," I said, nodding toward the hall. "Even if you don't yet understand who you want to be next," she smiled, this time without sadness. "That's already a good plan," she said. "And everything else can be built as you go." She looked at me a bit longer than was necessary by regional director protocol. "If you ever want to discuss how new communication lines are built," she said, "I'm available." "I know," I said, "and in my phone contacts." We said goodbye without grandiose promises. I got in the car, started the engine, and looked at the building one more time. The old warehouse that someone once abandoned had turned into a place where the light was on, not because it said so on a sign, but because someone really was living, learning, laughing there. I didn't know where I'd be in a year. I only knew that I would no longer allow myself to live in a house where the light only existed in photographs. I turned on the headlights and pulled onto the road. Somewhere behind me remained a brother who chose a short circuit instead of repair, a wife who chose a storefront instead of a home, a version of me that was ready to endure all of it. Ahead was a long stretch of highway and many uncharted intersections, but for the first time in a very long time, I was driving along it according to my own plan, not someone else's blueprint, and this was no longer revenge. This was a new connection.